3CR Radiothon 2024, Sound On for Solidarity.
Coming up is a podcast brought to you by the dedicated and diverse volunteers at 3CR. Just a quick message before you get there. For the month of June, we're asking listeners to donate to the station to help us keep going. We rely on the generous donations of community to survive. Go to 3cr.org.au/donate and show your support for community-owned and community-run media. Thanks for your support and happy listening.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English-language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Palestine Remembered. Today I join you from far north New South Wales. I'm in Byron Bay, having spoken yesterday and today a rally here in Byron Bay and a BDS conference this evening. And tomorrow in Brisbane and Mianjin, the rally there. I'll be visiting University of Queensland as well in the encampment there. So if you're listening up Mianjin, Brisbane way, get along today to Byron Bay. There's a couple of events, a rally at 2 o'clock and a BDS conference at 7 p.m. in Byron Bay. And tomorrow, of course, your Nakba rally, wherever that might be, in Melbourne, 12 o'clock, State Library. Get out, get loud. We need to commemorate this 76th anniversary of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Our adversaries have really ratcheted up their campaign. It's the legal fair, lawfare, legislative fair, if you want to call it that. We saw during the week Senator Fatima Payman, a junior senator, a young hijabi woman who is a refugee from Afghanistan, stand up to her party, stand up to the government, stand up for what was right. She accused Israel of conducting a genocide, and she called on her colleagues, on her parliamentarians, to stand up for what was right. And in particular, what was heartening was the comments she made. She endeavoured to organise a press conference, but of course, because she's a woman of colour and a hijabi, there was very few media there, but the SBS did manage to catch it. And she said, instead of advocating for justice, I see our leaders performatively gesture, defending the oppressor's right to oppress, while gaslighting the global community about the rights of self-defense. She said her conscience was uneasy for too long and that she needed to speak out and that this is a genocide and we need to stop pretending otherwise. The lack of clarity, the moral confusion, the indecisiveness is eating at the heart of the nation. To her great credit, she stood up, spoke out. Many amongst our community will be disappointed that it took her so long, but I know this young woman, and I know she's a woman of great integrity and honour, and I know that she has been endeavouring to work the system from within, and when she finally realised that nothing she could do within would work, that she needed to speak on the outside. She closed with a couple of key important phrases, and I want to speak to this. And she addressed our Prime Minister directly. She said, I ask our Prime Minister and our fellow parliamentarians, how many international rights laws must Israel break for us to say enough? What is the magic number? How many mass graves need to be uncovered before we say enough? How many images of bloody limbs of murdered children must we see? She ended by repeating the phrase, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And for many of us, for all of us in fact, we understand what that actually means. When we talk about Palestine being free, from the river to the sea, we're talking about a tomorrow that is the absolute opposite of today, which is a Palestine from the river to the sea that is not free. It is not free. It's not free for any Palestinian, irrespective of where they are in that geography. And to our Zionist adversaries, to our Jewish supremacists, you should know that you're not free. An occupation is never benevolent. No occupier can ever occupy a people in a manner that sees them free either. For the occupier is trapped in a Gordian knot. The boot of the oppressor onto the throat of the oppressed binds them together. In fact, Palestinian freedom, Palestinian liberation is, in fact, Israeli liberation. When we say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, we are talking about everybody being free. Muslims, Christians, Jews, and anybody else, and any other religion, or any atheist as well. So we will continue to chant it. During the week following Senator Payman's statement, our Prime Minister, he admonished her, he isolated her. He said that these words were inappropriate, they were divisive. They are not. They are inclusive, and they speak to the majority of Australians to understand what equality is. As if that wasn't enough, our alternative Foreign Minister, Simon Birmingham, introduced a motion in the Senate where it's protected speech. There's a parliamentary privilege there to introduce a Senate motion condemning the phrase and saying it's the antithesis of what Australia's bipartisan position is on a two-state solution. Shameful. Simon Birmingham, shameful. Shameful on all of the members of the Senate that voted with that. But we must applaud. We must applaud those that voted against, including all of the Greens, Independent Senator Lydia Thorpe, and Teal Senator Pocock in Canberra. We thank them for standing on the right side of history, protecting the right of free speech and protecting peace speech. If that's not enough, in New South Wales, one of our staunchest friends, a member of the state parliament there, Anthony D'Adam, who is a staunch friend of Palestine and has always fought for Palestinian rights and for the rights of all people to be free from the river to the sea, was speaking as the parliamentary secretary, made a speech about the police brutality and violence being inflicted upon Palestinian protesters, and he spoke about the response. He spoke specifically about the intimidatory tactics that the police were using and curtailing the basic civil liberties and rights of Australians to enjoy free speech and to peacefully protest. He's expressed these concerns many times, and in particular around the protest laws that are amongst the worst in Australia and New South Wales. He spoke out about that, and New South Wales Premier Chris Minns decided that enough was enough in his mind, that he needed to remove Anthony D'Adam as the parliamentary secretary, a significant demotion in responsibility and prestige within the party. A really shameful act, bowing to the Zionist lobby. And if that wasn't enough, in Victoria, in the state parliament on Wednesday, on actual Nakba Day, when the petition that had been signed by thousands of Victorians demanding that the Albert petition be debated, Labor was a no-show. During the day, the Leader of the House banned the wearing of a kufiyyeh, had no problem with a member of the Parliament wearing an Israeli badge or some sort of badge that signified support of Israel and the ongoing genocide. No problem with that, but the kufiyyeh ban in the Victorian Parliament was passed. We then saw in the federal Parliament the Indigenous Australian, and I say that between inverted commas, quote, our Indigenous Australian Pauline Hanson enter the Senate draped in Israeli flag scarf. Just a shocking display of racism that compounds on top of the hurt of Australian Palestinians and their supporters are feeling, compounding on what she did with her stunt entering the Senate in a burqa. Just shameful how our parliaments, whether they're at state or federal, continue to abrogate their responsibility to bring together our communities, to uplift and hear the pain of Palestinians, the concerns of Australian Palestinians, and how we are feeling. Next up, of course, is our heroic students in encampments all over the country. The primary one is Melbourne University and the staunchness there of the Palestinians who've occupied, the Palestinian students and those supporters who have had their encampment now for 3 and a bit weeks. Wednesday on Nakba Day, I was there. We had a peaceful rally and a peaceful march. We entered one of the buildings there and had a sit-in. Not long after that, the provost there, she came and she, came along and she said, I'm here and, I want to talk to you. Your peers don't want you in here. And she spoke about the fact that she didn't feel unsafe and that she was thankful that they were peaceful. And then she said, if you don't leave by 2:30, I'm going to call the police. That was on Wednesday. We're now Saturday. She has yet to instruct the police or give authority to the police or issue a trespass order or whatever the trigger might be to get the police to come and arrest or to move those students on. Seeing all sorts of provocations and attacks on the people who can protest, the concept that they're all outside agitators and professional protesters, quote unquote. It's so concerning that we're getting robbed of our rights to protest and free speech whilst the genocide is going on. And all this is happening. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed. We're at day 223 of no food, no gas, no electricity, no water, of the Israeli Defense Minister, amongst so many others, calling Palestinians human animals, etc. South Africa was again at the International Court of Justice demanding that Israel stop its genocidal, murderous campaign. I'm not sure what else we can say about what's going on other than to remember that the Palestinians, like all indigenous people, will remain steadfast and unbroken. They get their strength and draw on that strength from the lands that their ancestors have toiled for millennia. Also uplift all of the encampment activities, wherever they might be, and also the Monash action that happened on Monday night when Monash University allowed for what is, quote-unquote, Israeli Anzac Day, where Australian Jews and Zionists and supporters of the State of Israel commemorate soldiers who have been killed in battle. These are the soldiers that have committed the most heinous of crimes against humanity, that participated in the genocide, these war criminals that have participated in the genocide of Gaza, but also in so many other massacres. That student body had requested Monash University move that event off campus somewhere else, that they don't feel safe, that Palestinian students, Muslim students, identifiably Muslim students, don't feel safe during this current genocide, and the university ignored them. That protest went off and was well attended, and a significant uplifting in the morale of those students who really have been abandoned by their university, with nobody speaking to them, and it was great to have so many people along supporting those students. After the break, Jiselle and I are going to be speaking about the Victorian State Labor Conference that's being held this weekend. We're going to play the song by Macklemore called Hind, which is named after Hind, the 6-year-old Palestinian girl who was trapped in a car with her family who'd been murdered by the Zionist Israeli forces. She called her aunt and said, can you come and get me? The Red Cross coordinated with the Israelis to allow for an ambulance to go. 6 days later, when that area was cleared by the Israeli military, they found Hind's body as well as those Palestinian ambulance drivers dead in a massacre and a absolute targeted assassination of those two medical workers that brings hundreds of targeted massacres. So stay tuned for Hind's Hall by Macklemore and Jiselle and I to talk about the Labor Party State Conference.
Stand in solidarity with Palestine this Sunday.
Hi, it's Nasser Mashni from Palestine Remembered, Australia's only dedicated show on Palestine. Join me every Saturday morning at 9:30 and very importantly, get along to our rallies. Sunday, 12 o'clock, State Library. Join us.
We have to mobilise to show our support for Palestine. 12 p.m, State Library, this Sunday.
Rally to demand freedom and justice for Palestine. No war on Gaza.
Free Palestine Melbourne is a 3CR supporter.
Yeah, The people, they won't leave. What is threatening about divesting and want a piece? The problem isn't the protests, it's what they're protesting. It goes against what our country is funding. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. When I was 7, I learned a lesson from Cuban Easy-E. What was it again? Oh yeah, fuck the police. Actors and badges protecting property in a system that was designed by white supremacy. But the people are in the streets. You could pay off Meta, you can't pay off me. Politicians who serve by any means, APAN, kufiyyeh, and all the companies. You see, we sell fear around the land of the free, but this generation here is about to cut the strings. You could ban TikTok, take us out the algorithm, but it's too late. We've seen the truth, we bear witness. Seen the rubble, the buildings, the mothers and the children, and all the men that you murdered, and then we see how you spin it. Who gets the right to defend and who gets the right of resistance? Has always been about dollars and the color of your pigment. But white supremacy is finally on blast, screaming free Palestine to their home at last. We see the lies and claiming it's anti-Semitic to be anti-Zionist. I seen Jewish brothers and sisters out there and writhing in solidarity and screaming free Palestine, with them organizing and learning and finally cutting ties with the state that's gotta rely on apartheid system to uphold and occupying violent history. Been repeating for the last 75. The Nakba never ended, the colonizer lied. If students' intents posted on the lawn, occupying the quad is really against the law, and a reason to call in the police and their squad. Where does genocide land in your definition, huh? Destroying every college in Gaza and every mosque, pushing everyone into Rafah and dropping bombs. The blood is on your hands, Biden, we can see it all. And fuck no, I'm not voting for you in the fall. Undecided, you can't twist the truth. The people out here united, never be defeated when freedom's on the horizon. Yet the music industry's quiet, complicit in their platform of silence. What happened to the artist? What you gotta say? If I was on a label, you could drop me today. I'll be fine with it, cause the heart fed my page. I want a ceasefire, fuck a response from Drake. What you willing to risk? What you willing to give? What if you were in Gaza? What if those were your kids? If the West was pretending that you didn't exist, you want the world to stand up, and the students finally did. Let's get it.
It's real, it's authentic, and it hugs you, and it loves you for you. And that's what I think 3CR is. It's your best friend that doesn't care what you look like, how you sound, how you dress, how you move. It's going to accept you and love you as you are.
You're listening to Community Radio 3CR. This is Palestine Remembered.
Now, Jiselle, the Labor Party is meeting for the next 2 days, obviously to talk about policy and how they might stay in power and everything, but there is significant movement internally for some motions on Palestine.
Absolutely. I've actually got a number of the motions here if comrades are interested in knowing what they're about. Now, I will say that, there are 10,000 leaks going on at the moment, so these are amongst those leaks. But also that the text of these motions will likely change over the coming days. So the Labor Party is, there are a significant group of friends, Labor friends of Palestine, people in the Labor Party who remember what or believe the words that are written down about what the Labor Party is supposed to be and supposed to stand for. Many Marxists, such as myself, are very critical of even that and have an analysis of why the Labor Party will never, ever be able to take a clear position against Israel and in support of Palestine. But many of our trade union friends and comrades are still working tirelessly inside the Labor Party to try to reform or bring about change or apply maximum pressure to bring a crisis to the forefront in that party. So 4 motions going in the next few days. So one is in relation to justice for Palestine and the right to self-determination. This one is more or less about recognition of Palestine, and most people think this one will get up. So the first one is recognition of Palestine. The second one is about aid and increasing aid and support for UNRWA. This motion was developed when the federal Labor had withdrawn support and funding for UNRWA. So it's primarily about funding it, increasing funding it, and making sure that UNRWA is safeguarded and able to provide aid in Gaza right now. There's another motion about the International Court of Justice and the state conference calling on federal Labor to call for a permanent ceasefire in light of the ICJ's ruling that a genocide was very likely underway. It does call for the release of all hostages and political prisoners. That's Israeli as well as Palestinian political prisoners, and calling on federal Labor to ensure that Israel complies with the ICJ's provisional measures following that ruling. Then a few more what I think are a bit more controversial motions that may not pass. One is in relation to illegal settlements, so actually calling on federal Labor to apply pressure on Israel to stop and dismantle and remove settlements in occupied Palestine. And then social cohesion, which I think is more or less calling for that two-state solution that many of us oppose. That's a broad theme of those four motions going to the conference today and tomorrow.
One of the things, I spoke about it earlier on, is how much reform needs to happen within the Labor Party. I mean, we've got such staunch allies and friends in the unions from, the CFMEU, the AMW, the ASU, so many staunch friends that are doing their very best. But the politics of it, Giselle.
I mean, it comes down to your politics, I guess. Some people can reduce that idea to, just ideas. No, like people are engaging in the actual question, what does it take to change the world? What will it take to overthrow a system of apartheid? And I don't think when you look at the question from that point of view, the answer is change Labor from the inside. The Australian Labor Party, especially when it's in government, has no choice. This is the thing. These are scientific mechanics of capitalism and imperialism. The Australian Labor Party, whilst it is the government of Australia, whilst its imperialist interests are connected with the United States, and the United States imperialist interests are connected with maintaining Israel in the Middle East, Australia is not going to break with Israel. It's not going to break with the United States. That requires a fundamental reorganisation of the global economy and for workers, not just in Australia, but right across the world, to recognise that our interests are not with the governments that are perpetrating wars across the world.
There's a significant disconnect, and you can see it everywhere. I mean, increasingly, I saw some of the stats coming out of the United States with respect to homelessness, but everything, income inequality, health outcomes, etc. We might have done away with monarchies, but we've replaced that ruling class of dukes and duchesses and kings and queens with billionaires and trillionaires. Until we break that system and the power is redistributed back to humans, where we can all, share in a world that's precious for all of us. And, this is one of the things that we talk about in the struggle for Palestine, that in fact it sits there as that settler colonial outpost, that garrison state. As with every empire, at some point it becomes too costly to keep, to maintain, and that becomes the trigger for that revolution.
And I just want to bring it a bit closer to home, because I don't want people to think that this is all pie in the sky kind of thing. Like this Victorian Labor government, if you just look at the actions of State Education Minister Ben Carroll and his ties, his alliances to Israel, he is the one who negotiated that MOU with the Israeli Defence Force to the tune of $917 million. And it's that same government that right now is holding out on nurses, holding out on ambulance staff, holding out on all of these other elements of public investment. So while we're funding a war, we're not funding these basic human needs of working class people. On the 17th of October, comrades might recall, Ben Carroll stood on the steps of Parliament carrying a sign saying Australia stands with Israel. He's the one who last year travelled to Israel to negotiate this MOU and to tighten links between Victoria and Israel's Defence Force. Technically, what does it look like to lobby inside of that government to try to break ties with Israel? What are you generically, as in the collective you, what are you up against?
And just to clarify, that there is that memorandum of understanding and trade, some significant assistance from the Victorian government with respect to Albert, etc. The $917 million was a federal one. So that's Anthony Albanese and Richard Marles negotiated that contract, and that's actually cash leaving Australia and going straight to Albert and the Israelis to commit this genocide. But we've come to the end of the show. Thanks for listening. Make sure you get along to your Nakba protest, wherever you might be on this continent. And if you're in Byron Bay, 2 p.m. today at the park, and 7 o'clock, Marvel Hall for a BDS conference with myself and a couple of other people. And then tomorrow, wherever it might be, go to the APAN website, apan.org.au, and find your Nakba rally. Free Palestine.
Because the Palestinian fight isn't just the Palestinians' fight, it's all our fight, because it's a fight not just about land, it's about a fight for freedom.
Everybody should be standing here today saying Free Palestine.
Solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters on behalf of the Gumbaynja Nation, my people who've never ceded their sovereignty.
We should be recognising Palestine as a state and recognising the rights of Palestinians.
3CR. Stay tuned, stay radical.
3CR Radiothon 2024. Sound on for solidarity.
Did you enjoy listening to that podcast? 3CR is a community radio station, and you, the listener, are a part of that community. Right now, it's our radiothon. We need you to pitch in with a few dollars to keep the station going. We can't do it without you. It's easy. Head to 3cr.org.au/donate. Your donations really matter.